It began as a thought I could barely admit to myself, let alone my wife Maria. It crept into my mind at the strangest times, igniting both excitement and trepidation. The image of her, my gorgeous, vivacious Maria, in the arms of another man, a man who could match her confidence, her passion, her fire, would not leave me. And then, slowly but surely, one man in particular took shape in these daydreams, my boss, John. John was everything I wasn't: tall, broad-shouldered, with a commanding presence that seemed to draw attention wherever he went. He had a laugh that rumbled like thunder and a confidence that bordered on arrogance. But most of all, he had that unshakable air of a man who gets what he wants and, in my eyes, deserved someone as incredible as Maria. I began dropping hints, subtle at first, testing the waters. "You know, John always speaks highly of you," I'd say during dinner, watching her reaction. Or, "I think John admires your style. He said something about how sharp you always look." At first, Maria would brush it off with a laugh, but as the comments became more direct, she started looking at me with a mixture of curiosity and unease. Finally, one evening as we lay in bed, I took the plunge. "What would you think," I began carefully, "if John were interested in you?" She froze, the book she was reading slipping a little from her hands. "Interested? In what way?" Her voice was cautious, almost disbelieving. "You know," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady, "as more than just a friend." Her reaction was a whirlwind of emotions: shock, disbelief, even a little anger. But as I explained, haltingly at first and then with increasing confidence, how this was something that excited me, how it was a fantasy that had grown into something more, she began to listen. Really listen. "It's not that I don't love you," I reassured her. "I love you so much, Maria. Maybe that's why I want this. I want to see you happy, to see you with someone who can truly match you." Her expression softened as the words sunk in. "Sean, are you serious about this?" "I've never been more serious," I said. We talked late into the night, examining every facet of the idea. She admitted that John was an attractive man and that the idea of flirting with him had crossed her mind before, but she had always dismissed it out of loyalty to me. Now, with my blessing, my encouragement, it was a possibility she wasn't entirely opposed to exploring. Finally, after hours of conversation, she gave me her answer. "If you're sure this is what you want, Sean, then I'll try. But only if you promise we'll stop if it ever feels wrong." I promised. And with that, our plan began to take shape. Maria became more intentional in her interactions with John. She wore outfits that flattered her figure, applied just the right amount of makeup to draw attention to her captivating features, and laughed a little more freely at his jokes. I watched from the sidelines, my heart pounding with a mix of jealousy, pride, and anticipation as she began to flirt with him more openly. And then, one evening, John accepted our invitation to dinner. The night I had both dreaded and longed for was finally upon us. The day of John's visit was charged with tension. I couldn't help but feel the weight of my decision as Maria spent hours preparing for the evening. She chose a dress that was elegant yet undeniably provocative, a deep red number that hugged her curves and left just enough to the imagination. Her hair fell in soft waves, and her makeup was flawless, accentuating her almond-shaped eyes and full lips. She looked breathtaking. "Is it too much?" she asked, spinning in front of me nervously. "It's perfect," I said, swallowing hard. "You look stunning." Her cheeks flushed, but she gave me a small smile. There was still a hint of doubt in her eyes, but it was paired with something else: excitement. When John arrived, he filled the room with his presence, as he always did. He towered over me when we shook hands, his deep voice carrying an easy confidence. "Thanks for inviting me, Sean," he said, glancing briefly at Maria before turning back to me. "And Maria, you look incredible tonight." "Thank you, John," she replied, her voice warm yet demure. The evening began with drinks in the living room. Conversation flowed easily, mostly thanks to John's charisma. Maria was attentive, laughing at his jokes and asking questions about his work, her body language open and inviting. I sat back, sipping my whiskey, trying to appear relaxed even as my pulse quickened. At one point, John complimented the food Maria had prepared. "This is delicious," he said, his dark eyes fixed on her. "You're quite the chef." She laughed softly, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Well, I had some help, she said, glancing at me with a smile. But her attention quickly returned to him, and I noticed the way her posture subtly shifted toward John, her body drawn to his magnetic presence. As the evening wore on, I found myself both a participant and an observer in this intricate dance. Maria's laughter grew more uninhibited, her touches on John's arm more frequent. And John, for his part, seemed to revel in her attention. His gaze lingered on her a little longer than was polite, his compliments growing bolder. At one point, I excused myself, claiming I wasn't feeling well. Maria's eyes widened slightly in concern, but I reassured her with a subtle nod. "You two go ahead and enjoy yourselves," I said. "I just need to lie down for a bit." I retreated to our bedroom, leaving the door ajar just enough to see into the living room. My heart raced as I watched them from the shadows. Maria was seated on the couch, her legs crossed elegantly, her hand resting lightly on John's forearm as she spoke. He leaned in closer, his large frame dominating the space between them. Their conversation grew quieter, more intimate. Then it happened. John reached out, his hand brushing a strand of hair from Maria's face. She didn't pull away. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, her lips parting as if she were holding her breath. My chest tightened, and my grip on the doorframe steadied me. This was the moment I had both feared and craved. John leaned in further, his face mere inches from Maria's. She closed her eyes, and their lips met in a slow, deliberate kiss. It was electric, filled with a tension that had been building all evening. My stomach churned, but it wasn't with anger or regret. It was something else entirely, a mix of jealousy and exhilaration that left me breathless. Maria pulled back after a moment, her cheeks flushed and her breathing uneven. She said something to John that I couldn't hear, but he nodded, his hand still resting on her knee. I closed the door quietly and sat on the edge of the bed, my mind racing. This was happening. My beautiful, confident Maria was taking the first step into something we had only imagined, and I couldn't deny the thrill it sent through me. What would happen next? I wasn't sure, but I knew one thing: I couldn't wait to find out. Lying on the bed, I tried to steady my breathing, but my heart pounded as if it would escape my chest. I couldn't bring myself to leave the doorway for long. My curiosity and anticipation kept pulling me back to the sliver of light and sound filtering through the barely open door. In the living room, Maria and John had shifted closer. They weren't hiding it anymore. Maria's laughter was softer now, tinged with something more intimate, and her hand rested on John's thigh. John's massive frame dwarfed hers, yet she seemed entirely at ease, confident even. His hand, bold but deliberate, moved to rest on her lower back, and she didn't resist. Instead, she leaned into him, her smile radiant and inviting. The scene was mesmerizing, and though my emotions churned, I was rooted in place. Watching them, I felt a strange blend of pride and longing. Maria was stunning, vibrant, alive in a way that made my chest ache. This was what I had wanted to see her desired, adored by someone who could truly match her fire. John leaned in again, his hand brushing her cheek as he kissed her. This time, the kiss was deeper, more deliberate, and Maria responded without hesitation. Her fingers trailed up his arm, resting on his shoulder. The air between them crackled with energy, a magnetic pull that I could almost feel from where I stood. Then, Maria whispered something to John, her lips close to his ear. He chuckled, his deep voice resonating through the room, and she stood, taking his hand. My pulse quickened as I realized where this was heading. Maria glanced toward the hallway, toward me, her eyes lingering on the shadows for a moment. There was a subtle smile on her lips, a silent acknowledgement that she knew I was watching. It was a signal, not of defiance, but of assurance. This was for us. She led John toward the guest bedroom, their hands intertwined. I held my breath as they passed my door, her perfume trailing behind them, mingling with the faint scent of whiskey from earlier. John's towering figure followed her, his confidence unwavering. Once they disappeared into the guest room, I hesitated. Should I keep watching? Should I intervene? My emotions were a storm, jealousy clashing with exhilaration, anxiety giving way to a strange, heady excitement. Finally, I made up my mind. Slowly, I moved toward the guest room, careful to stay silent. The door was slightly ajar, just enough for me to see inside. The scene before me was unlike anything I had ever imagined. Maria stood near the bed, her back to me, her hands resting lightly on John's chest as he kissed her neck. Her red dress hung loosely off one shoulder, revealing smooth, flawless skin. John's large hands moved to her waist, his fingers firm yet gentle. Maria let out a soft sigh, her head tilting to the side, giving him full access to her neck. I could see the rise and fall of her chest, the way her fingers gripped his shirt as she leaned into him. It was an intimate, breathtaking display, and though jealousy flickered within me, it was overshadowed by a deep, undeniable satisfaction. I felt a strange sense of pride watching her like this, her confidence, her beauty, her ability to captivate a man like John. She was everything I had always known her to be, but seeing her through someone else's eyes made it all the more profound. They moved toward the bed, and I stepped back slightly, giving them privacy while still staying close enough to hear. Their voices were soft, their words indistinct, but the tone was unmistakable: mutual desire and admiration. The bed creaked lightly as they settled onto it, and I could feel my chest tighten, my breath catching as the realization hit me: this was real. My fantasy had come to life, and it was more intense than I had ever imagined. As the moments passed, I found myself captivated by the sounds of their connection, the gentle murmur of voices, the occasional breathy laugh, the rustle of sheets. My mind raced with emotions I couldn't fully understand, but one thing was clear: I wasn't angry or resentful. If anything, I felt closer to Maria than ever, as though this shared experience was deepening our bond. After what felt like an eternity, I heard them begin to quiet down. Soft murmurs and the sound of movement signaled the end of their time together. I stepped away from the doorway, returning to our bedroom to give them space. My heart was still racing, my thoughts a whirlwind, but I couldn't wipe the smile from my face. When John eventually left, he nodded at me on his way out, his expression neutral but respectful. I appreciated that. This wasn't about him, it was about Maria and me. As the door closed behind him, Maria appeared in the hallway, her dress slightly disheveled but her face glowing. "Sean," she began, her voice soft but steady. I crossed the room and took her in my arms before she could say anything else. Her scent was intoxicating, a mix of her perfume and something undeniably masculine. I kissed her deep the next morning, the sunlight poured through the curtains, bathing the bedroom in a warm glow. I woke up to the sight of Maria sleeping peacefully beside me, her hair fanned out across the pillow and her face serene. She looked angelic, as though the events of the previous night had only brought her a deeper sense of contentment. I lay there for a moment, reflecting on everything. The jealousy I had anticipated was nowhere to be found. Instead, I felt a profound sense of satisfaction, even pride. Maria had stepped into an unfamiliar situation with grace and confidence, and seeing her in that light had made me love her even more deeply. As I shifted slightly, she stirred, her eyes fluttering open. A sleepy smile played on her lips as she saw me watching her. "Good morning," she murmured, her voice soft and warm. "Good morning," I replied, leaning over to kiss her forehead. "How are you feeling?" She paused for a moment, as though considering her answer. "Strangely good," she admitted. "Better than I thought I would." "And you?" I smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I feel incredible. Proud of you. Proud of us." Her cheeks flushed, and she laughed softly. "I wasn't sure how you'd feel after everything. I was worried it might have been too much." I shook my head. "Not at all. If anything, it was perfect. Seeing you like that, it was everything I imagined and more." She looked at me for a long moment, her expression thoughtful. "Sean, I didn't think I'd enjoy it as much as I did," she admitted. At first, I was nervous, scared even. But then, something about it felt liberating. I felt confident, desired. Like I was seeing myself through someone else's eyes. I reached for her hand, lacing my fingers with hers. "That's exactly what I wanted for you. To see how incredible you are, to feel the power you have over people." I hesitated, then added, "and to share that with me." Her gaze softened, and she leaned into me, resting her head on my chest. We lay like that for a while, the silence between us comfortable and intimate. Finally, I spoke again. "Maria, I know this is new for both of us, but I can't help feeling like this is the beginning of something." Something that could bring us closer than ever. She looked up at me, her eyes searching mine. Are you saying you want to do this again? I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. Only if you're comfortable with it. This isn't just about me, it's about us. But yes, if you're open to it, I'd love to explore this side of our relationship further. Her lips curved into a small smile, and she nodded slowly. I think I'd like that too. But only if we keep being honest with each other, like we were last night. Always, I promised. We spent the rest of the morning wrapped in each other's arms, talking and laughing like newlyweds. It felt as though a weight had been lifted, as though we'd unlocked a new level of intimacy that neither of us had ever imagined. Later that day, as Maria got ready to run some errands, I found myself lost in thought. The image of her with John replayed in my mind, not as a source of jealousy, but as a memory of her confidence, her beauty, her freedom. It stirred something in me, an eagerness to see her shine like that again, to share in her adventures and experience the thrill of it all through her eyes. I thought about John, his respect and discretion, and realized he was the perfect person for this first step. But the possibilities didn't end there. Maybe there were other moments waiting for us, other people, other scenarios that could bring the same mix of excitement and connection. Maria's voice pulled me from my thoughts. Sean? Are you okay? I turned to see her standing in the doorway, her keys in hand and a curious smile on her face. Yeah, I said, smiling back. Just thinking. About last night? She asked, her tone light but knowing. About us, I corrected. And what's next? She walked over, leaning down to kiss me softly. Whatever comes next, she said, we'll figure it out together. As she left, I sat back, letting my thoughts wander. The future felt wide open, filled with possibilities I had never considered before. And for the first time in a long while, I felt truly alive, ready to embrace whatever adventures lay ahead that evening. As Maria and I sat together on the couch, the atmosphere between us felt lighter, more relaxed than it had in years. It was as if a veil had been lifted, allowing us to see each other with fresh eyes. We sipped wine and talked about everything and nothing, the conversation flowing naturally. But I could sense that we were both dancing around the topic that was still fresh in our minds. Finally, I broke the silence. Maria, I've been thinking about something. She tilted her head, curiosity lighting up her eyes. What is it? I hesitated, unsure how to put my feelings into words. Last night, it wasn't just about the excitement or the fantasy. It was about seeing you happy, confident, and free. That's what I want for you, for us. Her expression softened, and she set her glass down. Sean, I felt that too. It wasn't just about John. It was about us, and how much trust we have in each other. She paused, her gaze thoughtful. I never realized how much I needed that permission to explore a side of myself I've always kept hidden. You've always been amazing, Maria, I said, reaching for her hand. But seeing you like that, it was like watching you discover a part of yourself for the first time. And I was proud to be part of it. She smiled, her fingers lacing with mine. I've never felt closer to you than I do now. It's strange, isn't it? That something like this could bring us closer instead of tearing us apart. It's because we were honest with each other, I said. We trusted each other enough to take this step. And it worked. Maria leaned in, resting her head on my shoulder. Do you think we'll do it again? She asked quietly. I smiled, stroking her hair. If you want to, yes. But only when you're ready. There's no rush. She nodded, her voice soft but certain. I think I'd like that. But for now, I just want to focus on us. That night, as we lay in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about how far we'd come. The journey from my first hesitant suggestion to where we were now had been a whirlwind of emotions, fear, excitement, jealousy, and finally, acceptance. But through it all, one thing had remained constant, my love for Maria. As she drifted off to sleep beside me, I reflected on what the experience had taught me. Love wasn't about possession or control, it was about trust, freedom, and the willingness to explore the unknown together. By stepping outside of our comfort zones, we had discovered a deeper connection, one that went beyond traditional boundaries. And as I held her in my arms, I knew this was just the beginning. There were more adventures ahead, more opportunities to grow and learn together. Whatever came next, we would face it as partners, as lovers, as equals. The future was ours to shape, and I couldn't wait to see where it would take us. Weeks passed, and life settled into a comfortable rhythm. But beneath the surface, there was an undercurrent of excitement, a shared understanding that Maria and I were on the brink of another step in our journey. The experience with John had brought us closer, opening a door to possibilities we had never imagined, and now, we were both curious to see where the path might lead next. One evening, as we shared a quiet dinner at home, Maria broached the subject. So, she began, her tone casual but her eyes sparkling with curiosity. Have you thought about what's next? I set my fork down, a smile tugging at the corners of my lips. I have. But I wanted to hear your thoughts first. How do you feel about it? She leaned back in her chair, sipping her wine thoughtfully. It's strange. Part of me is nervous, but another part. I can't deny how much I enjoyed it. The confidence it gave me, the way it made me feel. It was freeing, in a way I didn't expect. I nodded, understanding her completely. That's exactly what I wanted for you, Maria. To see you like that, to be part of something that made you shine even brighter, it was incredible. She smiled, reaching across the table to take my hand. I know it was your idea, Sean, but you were right. It brought us closer. And now, I'm curious to see where we can take this. A silence hung between us, not uncomfortable but charged with anticipation. Finally, I decided to voice what had been on my mind. What if we chose someone together this time? I suggested. Maria raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Together? You mean, we both decide who it will be? Yes, I said. It could be someone we both agree on, someone who excites us both in different ways. That way, it's not just about you or me, it's about us. She considered this for a moment, her fingers tapping lightly against her glass. I like that idea. It makes it feel more balanced, more mutual. I grinned. So, do you have anyone in mind? Maria laughed softly, her cheeks flushing slightly. I hadn't really thought about it. But if we're doing this together, maybe we could look for someone who fits what we're both drawn to. We spent the rest of the evening brainstorming, tossing out names and descriptions, laughing as we debated what qualities might make someone a good match. It felt like a game, playful yet meaningful, and I couldn't help but marvel at how far we'd come. As the night wore on, Maria leaned closer, her expression thoughtful. What about that new guy at the gym? She asked. The one who's always in the weight room? I raised an eyebrow. The tall one with the tattoos? She nodded, a playful smile on her lips. That's the one. He seems confident, but not arrogant. And you have to admit, he's striking. I chuckled, appreciating her honesty. He's definitely striking. And he does have a certain energy about him. Maria's smile widened. Should we try to get to know him? See if he'd be interested? The idea sent a rush of adrenaline through me. Why not? We can start small, casual conversations, see how he responds. If he seems open to it, we can go from there. She nodded, her excitement mirroring mine. This could be fun. For the next few days, we made an effort to engage with the man, his name was Ethan, during our gym visits. Maria's natural charm made it easy, and soon, casual hellos turned into friendly conversations. Ethan was personable, confident but not overbearing, and I could see the way Maria's eyes lit up when they talked. One evening, as we walked home from the gym, Maria slipped her arm through mine. I think he might be interested, she said, her tone conspiratorial. Really? I asked, my heart pounding. What makes you say that? He mentioned how much he likes strong, confident women, she said with a grin. And he kept looking at me like he was trying to figure me out. I laughed, shaking my head. Well, he's not wrong. You are a strong, confident woman. She squeezed my arm, her excitement contagious. So, what's next? I took a deep breath, the thrill of anticipation coursing through me. We take it slow. See if he's open to the idea. And if he is, we take the next step together. Maria nodded, her smile radiant. I like that plan. As we walked the rest of the way home, hand in hand, I couldn't help but feel a surge of gratitude. This journey we were on was unconventional, yes, but it was ours. And with every step we took, I felt our bond growing stronger, our connection deeper. Whatever lay ahead, I knew we were ready to face it together.